Let me say just a bit more about that chant. What I was taught was that one of the reasons it's sort of untranslatable is the Om is the central vibration of the universe, the creative vibration that creates the universe. And then the Mani Padme Hum is the jewel in the heart of the lotus, all of which is untranslatable because the lotus is not just a flower, but it's symbolic of having its root in the mud and its flower up in the air. And so it's a classic symbol for the uniting of earth and heaven, of flesh and spirit. And so it's not just a lotus, it's not a flower, it's that connection between heaven and earth, between spirit and flesh. And then the jewel, whether it's a diamond or a ruby, doesn't really matter, is the central beingness of that connection between heaven and earth. And so you can call it whatever you want. You can call it energy, source, spirit, God, whatever on it. But the chant is very evocative because it allows your mind to go into what is the nature, the core essence of that connection between heaven and earth. And it's just like, go translate it if you want, but it means so many different things, and you can sit there and ponder that for a long time. Like Jerry said, this is the sermon from last Sunday, but I wanted to talk about spirit. Last Sunday was Pentecost, and so it's sort of like the sort of a minor holiday within the Christian tradition. Doesn't compare with Christmas and Easter, but the giving of the Spirit. Today is Trinity Sunday, another minor one, even more minor. But I thought I'd just talk about Spirit, and I want to give you 4 examples of it. What's hard on talking about Spirit is that it's ineffable, is a good word for it. It's difficult to talk about. Not because we don't want to or we shouldn't, it's just we don't have decent words for it. To give you an example, I saw a video clip of a late middle-aged black man sitting in a courtroom, his lawyer right next to him. He had been in jail, falsely accused, for 40 years. And at this trial, the judge, the video is on him as the judge is pronouncing him not guilty and he is free to go. And so you have the look on his face. And after the trial was over, a reporter asked, "So, how do you feel?" And it's just like, well, we don't have words to say that. A young man goes up to the girl of his dreams and proposes. And then the reporter comes and says, "So, how do you feel?" And it's just like, we don't have words to describe some of the deep things that happen in our lives, whether they're positive or negative, the deep joys, the deep sorrows of our lives. But I want to give you 4 really wide examples of spirit. And just to describe them and talk about them at least a little bit. One's personal, one's a poem from Rumi, by the way, 13th century Sufi poet. One is from Scripture and one's from Buddhism. So the personal one. And this, once again, I'm hard pressed to tell you what this means to me. But what happened? I'm at the corner of Beethoven and Leroy. There's a stoplight there. Late at night. It's not quite midnight, but say between 11 and midnight, something like that. I'm tired. I'm wanting to go home and go to bed. However, true to my nature, I hit the red light, even though nobody is coming. And so I'm sitting there dutifully at this red light. And the light turns green, and it's time for me to go, except my leg won't move. So my right leg that was on the brake, it's time to put it over onto the gas. You know what the deal is on that. And my leg would not move. So I look down at my leg, and everything sort of looks normal. And I'm confused. I'm like, what's going on? And I'm looking at my leg, and I'm looking at this green light. And I'm wanting to go home. I want to go to bed. And so I reached down with both hands, and I decided, well, I'm going to lift my leg up and put it on the gas. And I'm in the process of doing that when I think, you know, maybe that's not a good idea. Because if my leg is like heavy, and I have got no control over it, maybe it'll just give it the gas and go, and I won't be able to put it on the brake. So I had that thought, and it's just like, so I hesitate. I've got both hands on my leg, I'm getting ready to lift it up, and I look up at the light again, and I'm like, crap. This is no good at all. When, at about 60 miles an hour, another car comes through, zooming through, running the red light, because I still had the green. And I probably would have died. You know, 60, he was going fast. I got a glimpse of the driver, and it was real spooky, because it was like he had his eyes like wide open. So maybe drugs, I don't know. But somehow or another there was some light inside his car so that I could see his face, even though it's nighttime out. And he zooms by. I'm like, wow. You know, you can imagine, see, I can't tell you what all I'm thinking and feeling, because it's like lots of stuff all at once. And boom, my leg moves. And now I'm able to go. So now, how do I interpret that? And how do I tell you what that means to me? Because one of the things it means to me somehow is that, okay, there's something bigger going on. And my life just got saved by that something bigger. Now, I didn't tell this to my church, but that was one of 5 times that I almost died that year. I was in a single engine plane where the gas line got broken and we had to land under no power. I almost went over a waterfall onto jagged rocks. I slipped down a gully and I landed on my back against a huge old hemlock tree with a stick about this big around and about 6 feet long here and another one here. I would have been impaled and they would have found the body later. So this is a sermon about spirit. It's there. I can't tell you much about it, other than it means the world to me, and it saved my life. Here's the Rumi poem. This is a poem that sort of goes against our nature, which is exactly what we need. It's called The Guest House. It's one of his more famous ones. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. My initial reaction to that is, yeah, right. Very hard to do. But what is that beyond at the end that he's talking about? And it's spirit. It's something that is greater than us, beyond us, largely invisible, unbelievably powerful, but the truer nature of the universe versus the created stuff that we see and is part of our daily lives. And so 2 lessons that I take from that poem is that exists. There is this universal, invisible, powerful beyond. And then what I would add to it, this is not in the poem, but what I would add to it is that beyond is love. You can use an equal sign if you want. That beyond equals love. And that's why it's okay to invite them in. Because the sorrows and the delights are all sent from that ineffable beyond for the purpose of our good, our growth, our enlightenment, our salvation. 3rd example is the one from Scripture. So one personal, one from the poem. This is a verse in the Bible that's pretty extraordinary from Scripture. In Ecclesiastes 3, you hear it mostly at weddings and funerals. But there's a time to live and a time to die, a time to sow and a time to rend, a time to plant, a time to pluck up, all that stuff. That's verses 1 through 8. Here's verse 9 through 15. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He's made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he's put a sense of past and future into their minds. Yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it's God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done this, so that all should stand in awe before him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already is, and God seeks out what has gone by. So there's one verse in there that's extraordinary. It's not translated well. I'm going to complain about it a little bit. But it's verse 11. He's made everything suitable for its time. So the word suitable is okay, but the word there is beautiful. So you can use suitable, you can use appropriate, you can use like practical maybe, but the word is beautiful. And then it says this, moreover, he's put a sense of past and future into their minds. Yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. So that sense of past and future, the word there is olam. And it's a very important Hebrew word. It's used in a lot of different places, but it has a very, very clear understanding what it means. And the reason it's like that Om Mani Padme Hum, it's almost untranslatable because it means the all. What it really means is Einsteinian space-time. So all of time, past and future, all of space. So the cosmos, the world, the universe, infinity, eternity, all those are the kind of words that are used to translate Olam. And so what this is saying is that, moreover, he has put Olam into our, and then hearts. It's not minds, it's lev, hearts. But not the 4 chambers beating blood heart. The inner essence of who we are is what lev means. So, you can translate it as heart, but don't think biology. Think spirituality. The core inner beingness of what a human being is. God has put Olam into our inner being. It's exactly saying the same thing that Jesus said when he said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Mm-hmm. Don't look for it out there. Don't look for it over there. It's within you. saying exactly the same thing. And then the verse concludes, yet so they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. In other words, our intellect struggles to keep up with the core reality of it, that Olam, the universal createdness of it all, the whole shebang, within our hearts, within our souls, within our spirits. And yeah, the intellect doesn't quite get that real easily and struggles with that kind of notion. That is spirit. That's that beyond that's in the poem. That's that greater existence that is beyond the physicality that dominates our attention all the time. Okay, that's 3 out of 4 so far. So one's personal, one's poem, one's then from Ecclesiastes, and then here's the last one, which I like. A story that's found several places in Buddhist literature is that one of the Buddha's disciples was, shall we say, slow. We don't know if it's Down syndrome or whatever, but not the sharpest tool in the shed, not the brightest light bulb among all the others. And what happened was that the Buddha was teaching all of his disciples by giving them oftentimes mantras or just simply precepts to memorize. And so here's your lesson for the day, and then they would memorize that, and you collect them all together and you grow into enlightenment, the way the Buddha was teaching them. And this poor disciple was getting really frustrated because every time he got a new one, he forgot all the others. And he was feeling stupid. And the other monks, the other disciples were pointing this out to him and saying that maybe you shouldn't be one of us. It's a little bit about Rudolph and the reindeer, you know, it's just like, you're not good enough really to be one of us. So he goes to the Buddha and he's very distraught. He's feeling that maybe he does need to leave. And the Buddha asks him, well, what are you good at? And what he did is he took care of the monastery. And so he was pretty much like the custodian of the monastery. And so the Buddha said to him, well, okay then, wipe off the dust, sweep the floor, take out the trash. Wipe the dust, sweep the floor, take out the trash. And he memorized that. And so that's what he did. And then he had his original thought. Didn't come from the Buddha, he thought this up on his own. He remembered that all those other statements that he kept forgetting and he just couldn't hold into his mind, all those others, all had to do with the cleaning of the mind. And he decides, well, wait a minute. While I wipe the dust and sweep the floor and take out the trash, I'm going to think about my mind. And then the conclusion of the story is that he became enlightened long before the other monks did. And that is another example of spirit. Taking one simple teaching and taking it seriously enough to apply it to the whole of our lives and lead us into whatever you want to call it, spiritual growth, enlightenment, awakening, salvation, whatever you want to call it. But taking those precepts, taking those understandings one at a time and applying them to our lives. So those are my 4 examples. Personal, a poem, scripture, and then a story from the Buddha. My only point being that there is spirit. And spirit has, contrary to our intellect, contrary to our perception on a daily basis, spirit is more real and more powerful than our spirit, than our physical existence. It is the truer reality. This is the lesser reality in our lives. Recognizing that raises our vibration, leads us into the path of love, leads to peace in the world. Any comments, questions? Yes, Vera.
When you mentioned the last one about the Buddhists clean the dust, sweeping the floor, taking out the garbage, it made me think of years and years of being a housewife. I did that for years and years, every day. So I must be enlightened.
Well, you're here. I have a question about enlightenment. In the Course in Miracles, it talks about like you won't be here if you're enlightened, sort of like that's the goal, and you'll be gone. Sort. And I just read the book Awareness by Anthony DeMello, and somebody comes up to him and asks if he's enlightened, and he will not. I mean, he's written all these books, but he will not claim being enlightened because then ego takes over, I think, is what he's saying. You know, it's not for me to know if I'm enlightened, or it's not something that's part of who we are in this form, I guess is what I think.
Yeah.
So the monk really was not aware of enlightenment and therefore became enlightened in a way. Do you think that's true?
In a way. The comment I would add, though, is that enlightenment, it's not like you have it or you don't. It's a spectrum.
And you have it sometimes and don't others, don't you think?
But it's more like, I would suggest to you that enlightenment on earth, it's much the same way in which a 3-year-old thinks a 4-year-old is smarter. Where there's a long way to go on it. And so, you know, somebody will look upon a person as a spiritual master, and it's just like, okay, well, they're 4 years old and we're just 3. There's a long way to go on it. But going back to the not being there, there is the notion, you know, with Gary Renard of the disappearance of the universe, that the physical realm is there. We're creating it with our minds. It's there for the purposes of our collective minds. But once we all are done with it, it will be gone. And existence will be at the higher dimensions at that point.
That's a long way to go.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Well, what sort of clicked in for me with the mantra and everything is just like how little we seem to, or myself, I can think, to be living in the now, you know, the moment. And I was just reminded of times in my life, to different extents, where time sort of stands still and you're in the now and it's like there's an awareness without the chatter and everything that goes on. And for some reason that just sort of, you know, I just felt that during the mantra and during a couple of things that you said. I thought, this is reality, we're here now. And this is it, it's not the past, the future, it's living in the moment, which sometimes it's a struggle, you know? Children live in the moment, sort of, yeah.
Yep, much more.
Mm-hmm.
The younger ones. Younger children probably more so than older children.
Yeah,
Because we
the
teach
baby,
them
I mean
how-
like the babies, they see maybe what we don't see in us or whatever. Yeah. Just a thought that occurred.
Anyone else? Yes, we
Was
have.
there reference in the Bible section that you used there about time already having happened?
Mhm.
How do you,
Well, time is one of the lower dimensions, and each dimension above it is not only includes what's below it, but is infinitely more than. So a plane is infinitely more than a line, and a line is infinitely more than a point, and a volume is infinitely more than a plane. Each dimension is infinitely more than the one above, below it. And so space-time is unbelievably trivial to the higher dimensions, and the higher dimensions supersede it. And so divinity, spirit, is not limited in any way by space or time, nor are we, because we are one with that. So the portion of who we are, the perception of our oneness, the portion of it, only a portion of us is dipped down into the lower dimensions for this incarnational experience. But it's not the whole of who we are, not even close. It's a portion of who we are. And so we experience it, and we think at this level of consciousness that that's it. You know, this is who art is, and that's who you are. And it's just not true. At the higher dimensions, it's all connected, it's all the one thing that we sing about, and our perceptions come together and coalesce at the higher dimensions. Yes.
And that's why, in a lot of ways, working with attention deficit disorder children has been very special and a gift, because I always say, and I have been saying this, but not to teachers, that they do not recognize time, they recognize form and space. And it's very different, a different type of reality, a different type of dream. And I always often think they go above and beyond what everybody else is seeing, thinking, and doing.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes they can. And let me add also about children is you know, what they say about them is that they have not forgotten their nature prior to incarnating. And so that memory is still sort of fresh for them. It hasn't been lost yet, like it has been for adults oftentimes. Yeah, Jerry.
In the summation where you said, I got the message of we're just spiritual beings having a human experience. And as Carolyn was talking about the Course in Miracles, what we started last week was about this physicality is like a picture. What we're looking at, or is the frame of the picture we're looking at. We missed the picture because we're staring at the frame. You know?
But it's gilded, so
That's the problem, is that we're looking at the frame and not the picture of what the truth is. And along what she was talking about, I've often felt that this altruism that's coming around is the missing link between us and our next higher intelligence.
But that also goes to state, I go to the Met as often as I can in New York City, and it states that I'm looking at all the pictures, and I'm going down the hallway, specific hallway, and I'll say, did you see this picture? And they go, that picture wasn't there at all. And I said, did you look on both sides of the hallway? And if you aren't looking, you miss. Even if we're in the same hallway, people will not see the same thing because they don't go beyond just one side, maybe. It's very interesting.
That reminds me of the, there's some kind, I think it's a Buddhist story, whatever, about seeing it, and I think of it often like you're just looking at one part of the elephant, and you don't, that, whatever that is, I've been reminded of it.
Yeah, the blind.
Yes, because we all do that, or sometimes I catch myself.
They circle
Go ahead,
around.
Peggy.
The
Yeah.
blind men circle around the
Yeah.
elephant, and they're told to feel the elephant.
Yeah.
One feels the trunk, one
Yes,
feels the
that's,
leg,
yeah,
and they all have a different perception
Yes.
because of it.
yeah.
And each one thinks they're right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
And in a sense, they are.
Yeah,
But
but they're not seeing the whole thing.
The
but
big
they're
picture,
blind
You're
to
not
think.
wrong, yeah.
right.
Like you have to circle before they leave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Told you it was a good one.
And I want you to sing along with me. So I wrote choose your pronunciation because there's slight variations, and I listened to several different YouTube videos of this chant because I was thinking, well, I better sing it right. But then I realized, well, both ways are right. So I think it originated in India as a Sanskrit chant, and then over time it moved to Tibet, and then they started to sing it with their sort of Tibetan accent. And so instead of saying Padme, they say Peme. And instead of saying like hum, they mean like hum with an NG sound. So it's whatever feels good to you, how you want to sing it. I've sung it both ways, and so while I'm doing this today, who knows how it's going to come out. It may come out one way, and then halfway through the song I might switch to the other way. So it's okay. It's just an accent, really. There's also different meanings, translations. So it's, if you wanted to boil it down to one word, I guess compassion, and letting go of suffering. Are you raising your hand, Julianne?
Well, I was just going to share with you. Om Mane Padme Om. That's the first one. I was taught that was, Oh Mother, take me home. The
See,
mother,
that's an interesting translation too.
Om Mane Padme Om.
There's a lot of different translations. I saw hung to mean hell. I didn't like that translation. I've also seen it to mean anger, hatred, but it's about transforming that into love and compassion. So I've also seen the Jewel of the Lotus as a translation. So there's probably books written on it. I don't know. I haven't read books, but I've just kind of gone through several different websites, and it's very interesting. So if you want to learn more about it, go ahead and just put it in your Google search, and you'll be reading for days probably. All right, so let's start this. Forgot to mention, so if you want to sing with me or if you want to make up your own melody, feel free. So we're just going to keep chanting this over and over. And then I have my second melody that I'm going to do is a little different. It goes like this. Then I would do that twice and then go back to that beginning part. Okay? Let's do it. Oh beside you.